Okay, Assalamu alaikum. How are you, everyone? Hope you can all hear me. Let's make sure the sound is working okay. Shift things around before we get started into this topic. Salam Muhammad Hassan, how are you? Parrot Boy, always good to see you. Parrot Boy Pirate. Whenever I see pirate in a username, I always think of the Somali pirates. Huh? Okay, we don't have anyone backstage yet. Should wait for a few more people to come on before getting started. Sorry about the delay today as well. The process of moving, so things are a bit hectic. You're free with us. In the stream, I wonder. I haven't actually looked at the analytics for this Caravan of Contemplation, but I wonder if it's starting to fall off again. Less and less people checking them out. At least less and less people live, and I'm not sure about the view count in them, which is the opposite of what we wanted, of course, but it doesn't matter as long as we are a few people contemplating is better than, a lot of people not. All right, okay, let me get started. This is you might think what a strange topic when I thought of doing it, and I thought of putting the title word count. I thought that people would, that's why I put it in the description. I thought people would start thinking, okay, he's going to be talking about, different numerical miracles in the Qur'an, and, well, they call them miracles, numerical signs in the Qur'an. And there are many, I mean, I'm learning a few every once in a while, I learn about a new one. I heard about one recently, that the word light and the word aql, intellect, in the Qur'an, they occur the same number of times. And that lends weight to Imam Ghazali's interpretation of that. The verse in Surah An-Nur, where Allah says, Nurun ala nur, right? Light upon light. God guides to his light whom he wills. Imam Ghazali says that's intellect on revelation, right? Light upon light is intellect acting on revelation. So, I guess talking about them, it's just, an added thing about the importance of the intellect. So even when we say, the verse of light, God's light is etc., right? That's Mathal Nurihi, the example, the parable of his light. Well, if light is equated in the Quran with aql, with intellect, then that same method can be applied to the intellect, and that's a new way of thinking. I haven't done it myself, but that would be a new way of sort of contemplating that verse of light, that famous verse of light, very mystical verse, trying to understand it in terms of light being the intellect. But anyway, I digress. Like I said, the reason why I wanted to get into this isn't actually about word counts in terms of the number of different words and how they are related to each other. The number of times dunya and akhirah are the same, number of times of angels and malaika and shayateen are the same, etc. No, this is about the word count of the Quran, the whole word count of the Quran, how much Quran we have, basically. And the Quran we have today could have been different. Okay, could have been very different. This idea that the Quran was there in this Lawh al-Mahfuz, right? It was there already as it is exactly, right? Somewhere up in the sky. And then it was brought down, right? It was brought down as it was. Okay, that isn't a very accurate representation. The Quran wasn't like that. The Quran was very dynamic with the times. So it could have had less verses or more verses. Okay, the Quran could have had less verses or more verses. How so? Okay, so let's look at this verse in Surah Al-Furqan. It says, وَلَا يَأْتُونَكَ بِمَثَلٍ إِلَّا جِئْنَاكَ بِالْحَقِّ وَأَحْسَنَ تَفْسِيرًا. Now this is one of the verses explaining why the Quran was not revealed all in one go. So they say, if you look at the previous verses, and I've put them here, but if you look at the previous verses, it's one of those dialogues between an objection of Quraysh mainly, and the response the Prophet is told to give them. So they say, لولا نزل هذا القرآن جملة واحدة. Why isn't this Quran sent down in one go? And God replies, كذلك لنثبت به فؤادك. Thus, so that we can consolidate or make firm your heart. Fu'adak, and that's an interesting thing. What's the difference between the word fu'ad and qalb in the Quran? They both seem to mean heart. نثبت به فؤادك ورتلناه ترتيلا, and we've sort of brought it down in stages or recited it in stages. And the next verse says, the other reason is وَلَا يَأْتُونَكَ بِمَثَلٍ إِلَّا جِئْنَاكَ بِالْحَقِّ وَأَحْسَنَ تَفْسِيرًا. And they do not come to you with an argument, literally in the verse says a methal, a parable, or something. Okay, they don't bring something to you, except that we bring the truth of it and the best tafsir, literally the best explanation. And this is one of the things, again, we have so many of our terms not Quranic, right? So what we call tafsir shouldn't be called tafsir. God is the one who does the tafsir, right? What we are commanded to do is tadabbur, and that's why we call these these sessions Tadaburat, right? God commands us to tadabbur. It shouldn't be called tafsir. The books of tafsir should be called books of tadabbur, even though most of the time they are not. Many other cases like this, sunnah and uswa, right? The sunnah in the Quran is not the sunnah of the Prophet. Instead, in the Quran, what we would call sunnah is called uswa. Okay, but this is another case of that. But the point is that in the Quran, the verses that we have in the Quran, many of them are reactions to what was happening at the time. Reactions to what was happening at the time. So they are in response to questions and situations that arose, and they were free choices of those people who participated in those times. Okay, so in response to those, verses were sent down and God spoke. All right, it wasn't that So here are some examples, right? They ask you about khamr and maisar. Say, reply. They ask you about alcohol and gambling. Reply to them with this. They ask you about Dhul Qurnayn. The answer is if the Jews had not come to, if the Meccans had not, on the advice of the Jews, asked the Prophet about, Dhul Qurnayn, would we have had this surah? Would we have had those verses in the Quran about Dhul Qurnayn? No, we wouldn't have. Okay, this is a response to what they asked. They ask you about the mountains, right? يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْجِبَالِ قُلْ يَنْسَفِهَا رَبِّي نَسْفًا, right? So God will wipe them out. Okay, they ask you about women's menstruation. Say, right? They ask you about the sacred months, fighting in them. Say, right? So etc. God didn't make these people ask these questions. Okay, He didn't preordain for them to ask these questions in order to reveal these verses. Okay, they could have not asked them. Okay, and then we would not have these verses. And in a similar way, other questions that were not asked, okay, had they been asked, then we would have verses that address them right now in the Quran. Right? We would have other verses in the Quran right now addressing those questions had they been asked. Okay. And the same goes for situations, of course. So the example I've put here is sort of, another reason why I wanted to talk about this week, because, running off the back of last week where we talked about, the fighting, which is very situational, right? Most of the time, the verses about fighting are very situational. So would we have had, the verse of jizya, right? The verse of jizya, had that conflict not existed, would we have had that? I don't think so. Okay, as we're saying, likely not. And instead, we would have been left to our own devices later on to do the standard thing, okay, known to the world over, which is to fight until the enemy surrenders and agrees to pay a jizya. Right? This is what happened all over the world. right? It still happens. It happened in World War One, World War Two. Japan was made to pay a jizya. Germany was made to pay a jizya. It's a standard thing, right? That the defeated party is made to pay something. A lot of the times it can be it's unjust when the one who started the war wins, and then he makes the defeated party pay a jizya. That's unjust, right? But when, as we've said in the Quran, that fighting is only against those who fight you, no, then it is just that when they start a war with you and then you defeat them, you make them pay a jizya, right? That is just. Okay, but let's not digress. I always forget my alarm at this time. Okay, so by understanding God, God didn't have a word count of the Quran. We can understand something of what is central and what is in a way incidental to the Muhammadan revelation incident. So that whole period where the Prophet was alive and receiving revelation, we can understand something of it by understanding that that some things which are revealed were revealed as a response. They were revealed as a response. If some of these things hadn't happened, the Quran would look very differently, right? We'd have probably less Quran, right? وَلَا يَأْتُونَكَ بِمَثَلٍ إِلَّا جِئْنَاكَ بِالْحَقِّ وَأَحْسَنَ تَفْسِيرًا. They do not come to you with a method, except that we come to you with the best tafsir, in the Quran itself. Okay, what if they had not come with that? Then God wouldn't have revealed those verses. Okay, we could have had significantly less Quran right now with us, if certain questions, situations hadn't come up. I mentioned this in one of the other streams, right? Don't ask, right? That stream where by continuously asking, okay, about certain things, right? You are restricting yourself because God would reveal, okay, would reveal what is most appropriate for Him. Okay, and we mentioned the example of Ben Israel continuously asking about the cow, the sacrificial cow. If they just sacrificed the cow from the beginning, any cow would have been accepted, but they kept on asking, what kind of cow? Tell us, specify, clarify, etc. Right? So, and then they suffered because of that. And there are some things that this ummah is suffering because of that as well. And so the Quran actually warned about that, right? Don't ask about things which, if made clear to you, would cause you difficulty. And if you ask about them while the Quran is being revealed, then it will be revealed, right? And then you'd be in that difficulty. Okay, but by sort of understanding this, we can see what it is, right? I also mentioned this, I think, in I don't know which video it was, but in one of the videos, what would the Quran have looked like if the people of Mecca had accepted the Prophet straight away, right? It would have been very different. Again, we wouldn't have had the hijrah. Maybe any battles that would have been with other tribes other than Quraysh, etc. But anyway, let's not. This is a big topic, and I'm worried I'm gonna go too deep into it. Okay, so something what is global and universal and what is local and particular can be seen by just understanding that basic thing. Okay, that there are some things in the Quran. God did not limit Himself to a word count, right? If something else had happened in the Prophet's time, we would have had right now these other verses in the Quran, and that doesn't mean that the Quran that we have now is less than what it would have been had the people in the Prophet's time asked certain questions which they didn't. Okay, and if certain verses had been revealed about that. Okay, if those had been, which they aren't in the Quran, but the Quran now, right, is not less in its guidance than this hypothetical Quran that would have been, which would have more verses had other situations come up. I'm not sure if that's clear, but let's move on anyway. Okay, so yet even though the local in the local imminence recorded in the Quran, right? Imminence means closeness. How the closeness of something. This closeness to the times in the Quran, there is still applicable. There is still the application of the universal transcendence. Okay, because the Quran also reflects the divine. Okay, who is also both transcendent and immanent. Right. So we can divide it in that kind of way. The immanence is the address. It's to address somebody directly. You're immanent. You're close. to be responsive to the time and to the timeline, to be dynamic, okay, to be close, near. Okay, there's room for dialogue. There's a back and forth. They ask, you say. They ask, you say. Okay, there's that kind of thing. And then there's also transcendence. Okay, there's this global address. Okay, this timelessness, this universal message that's sort of an impassive to what is going on at the time, to be distant. Okay, but God is not one or the other, right? He is both together at the same time, totally. Okay. So to put it another way, we could get to this question at the end of, some people say, why are there these verses in the Quran which address, things of that time? Why are they even there if we don't need them? Well, it would have been, sort of out of character, quote unquote, for God not to reveal verses that intimately addressed those people who were directly receiving the revelation and their situations, right? It would have been very distant, very cold. Imagine God is revealing to people, and imagine you are among those people, right? But God doesn't address anything about your times, about what's going on, nothing. Okay, that's not the God that we have in the Quran. That's not what God is both transcendent and immanent, right? He's not completely one or the other. He's not 60% one and 40% the other. He's completely both, 100% both, transcendent and immanent. So it would have been strange, right? I mean, think about it. God who looks at even he hears the footprints of the ant as it walks on, as it goes on a black stone in the middle of the night, right? Sees everything, and وَمَا مِن دَابَةٍ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ رِزْقُهَا. There's no crawling thing except God it's upon Him to sustain it. And yet, when revealing the final message, the final revelation, it doesn't address the people there at all. Nothing about what is going on in their times or anything. No, that would be very, very cold and distant, right? So yet, they were also addressed from His transcendence. So even though we have these things which are addressing the things of the time, it's done in a way which is still from transcendence. Okay, and that's why the Quran can stump historians. Okay, because it doesn't give the historian anything to latch on to, really, right? I mean, if you just had the Quran, you wouldn't know that it was revealed in Arabia, in Hijaz, in the 6th century. You wouldn't know anything about that, right? It consistently mentions no names, no dates, no individuals by names, even prophets, right? There are prophets in the Quran that are mentioned, no name, right? We sent to these people a prophet. They said, he said, they said, he said. We don't know who that prophet is. We don't even know who the people that were sent to. We don't know anything about it. قال الملأ, right? The leaders, the elders said this. Who are these mala? Okay, again, no tribes are mentioned. All right, no places. Okay, now when such things are mentioned, okay, that's about the imminence, right? The imminence. God is addressing something, but even then, most of the time, it's not, right? So it bridges both. Okay, that's why even though it mentions generally all of these things without names, without anything to latch onto, it lifts them up to be transcended at the same time, okay, to always be applicable. But there are times where it is more imminent than not, right? So Lila fi Quraysh, right? That's when Quraysh are mentioned, right? One surah only gets mentioned about them, and and still there's that transcendence in it where it's talking about the blessings of God, and there's still a lesson to be taken from it. Okay, another one is surat al-Lahab. I was thinking I was going to speak about that today, but I don't think I'll have the time. So tabbat yada abi lahab wa tab. People say, why is that in the Quran? Why does the whole surah dedicated to basically what looks to some like the Prophet just abusing his uncle, right? Well, Abu Lahab is mentioned there. We don't know anything. It's just that name, right? Tabbat yada abi lahab wa tab. And there's ways to read that surah. But again, so though there's an imminence there, it's addressing something specific. Okay, there's still a universal that can be learned from it. Okay, so in doing so, it transcends time. Okay, while also recording it. So while the Quran records this time, it also at the same time transcends it. Okay, those who say, they say قالوا in the Quran, وقالوا could be anyone in human history. Okay, and the reply given to them by you say it could be anyone in human history as well. All right, it doesn't say. We always say, when it says qul, it means you or Muhammad say, but it doesn't have to be. Right? Like I said, if you had this Quran, if you were living on a desert island, and a plane flying ahead of you, explodes or something, and from that, somebody on the plane had a mushaf and it lands on your desert island, and you had nothing else but this. You wouldn't know, though it means the qul, say, is addressing the Prophet. You wouldn't really think of that. Okay, so an answer to the question of why is X, Y, or Z in the Quran, if it only refers to the people of the time, is twofold. It can be given in two ways. Firstly, that God is not so distant or uncaring that he would ignore and not address those of the time. And the second is that God was not bound by any kind of word count in what he was revealing. Right? There was no word count. It wasn't like, okay, I've got a certain amount of Quran I'm going to reveal, and I want to make sure what's in there is relevant for everybody in all of human history. No, it wasn't like that. Everything which is in the Quran is relevant, okay, in one way or another. Okay, it might not be directly addressing us practically, but if it isn't that, it is helping us understand something which is universal. Okay, it's the application. It's always going to be, the application of the universals within the particular. Right, the universals. It's an example of the application of the universals in the particular. All right. Okay. So that's basically the end of this. Let's check now the other tab. See how many people we have. Hey, we got up to 12 people. Excellent. All right. I don't have anybody backstage wanting to come on. Let me just check on the comments. No comments. None of the usual back and forth between people in the comments. All right, good. All right. We have somebody here. Assalamu alaikum. Hey, this username, I keep on trying to, I'm not going to try to pronounce your name, but I think you've asked a couple of questions in the comments on my videos, but whenever I try to reply, it tells me this action is not allowed. So I think there was a couple of questions you asked on one of the videos, but I keep on trying to reply, but it won't let me reply. I don't know why. Anyway, assalamu alaikum. What does the first ayah of Surah Muhammad mean? So the first ayah of Surah Muhammad, well, let's look at it. Yes, you did. All right, yeah. Sorry, for some reason I don't know why it won't let me reply to your comments. I have no idea why. The first verse of Surah Muhammad. Let me just bring it up at least for myself. I want to keep this presentation on just because somebody might come on and want to ask about it. Surah Muhammad. So it says, الذين كفروا وصدوا عن سبيل الله يضل أعمالهم. Yeah, those who have kafaru and prevented from on the way of Allah, أضل أعمالهم. Their actions are astray. It doesn't mean that the actions are avoided. Some people think it's these actions which they are doing are actions which are astray. أضل أعمالهم. The actions are the most astray, literally. Adalla, if you look at the form adalla, it's like most astray. You can say adalla, adalla al-fariqain, right? The most misguided of the two groups. Adalla, who is the most misguided, right? So الذين كفروا وصدوا عن سبيل الله أضل أعمالهم. They have the actions are the most astray. Abdul Malik. No. Okay. Your name is Abdul Malik. And what is this the surname? I would not know how to pronounce it. All right. Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. Okay, nobody wants to come on? Just come on to say hi, even if you don't have anything to share. It's all good. If not, we might be ending a bit early, which is fine. Yeah, Abdul Malik. Yes, Abdul Malik, by the way. Yes, mashallah. Yeah, we're pretty quiet in the comments section, and we have nobody backstage. All right, I'll keep this on, of course, but about maybe 10 minutes. If nobody has come on, we will Might as well end it. Maybe I'll bring up some of the other relevant verses to what we've been talking about. What was the other verse that we were talking about? I forget what it was. Okay, well, let's bring up Surah al-Lahab. I thought I wouldn't have time to talk about it today, but it looks like we can. Let's bring up Surah al-Lahab and just discuss that a little bit. Why not? It means, Hamd al-Malik means Ibn Laqbalij. Okay, I see. All right, okay, brilliant. Okay, let me first try to get Surah al-Lahab on. We can just discuss that while for the next 10 minutes very briefly. Why not? Surah al-Lahab. Okay. I wonder if there's a way to change which screen I'm sharing. No, there isn't. Okay, restart the share. Okay, so Surah al-Lahab. Okay, the background of the surah is, of course, is well known. It is supposed to be about the Prophet's uncle, who was nicknamed, not by the Quran, by the way. Some people think that the Quran nicknamed him that. No, he was known as Abu Lahab even before. So it says, Tabbat yada Abi Lahabin wa tab, right? Perish the hands of Abu Lahab and perish he. Okay, Lahab. Okay, even in, I think it's where is the good old Yusuf Ali? Yeah, the father of flames, right? Abu Lahab. He translates it as the father of flames. Perish he. Now, what quality do we generally associate with flames? All right, what quality do we generally associate with flames? It's anger, right? Anger. So one way to read this verse, like I said, you can look at the universals over the particulars. Is that this is saying perish, tabbat, are the two hands, yada, the two powers, two abilities of the father of flame. What are they? Okay. Well, they mentioned in the next verse, right? What are the two hands? What are the two sources of power for a lot of people? Yeah. Ma aghna anhu maluhu wa ma kasab. These are his two hands, his wealth and what he acquires. Okay. Whether it's children, and other things, ma kasab could be children, wealth, anything that you earn. Okay. And a person of anger, okay, these things cannot help him. Okay, these things cannot help him. Not only can they not help him, but they will perish, right? Imagine a person who is always very, very angry, right? That person is not going to make a very good business person. The wealth will get squandered. Imagine going to a place of business and the person there is always angry. His wealth will very quickly deplete. What he earns will go. Okay, he can destroy it. He can eat it up. Right, the fire will eat it up. His anger will eat it up. Ma aghna anhu maluhu ma kasab. It has not enriched him. Right, these things cannot enrich a person who is always angry. Right, and if you notice angry people, they don't have what in Arabic is called ghina anyway. Ghina has two meanings. Okay, there's wealth, richness, but the important thing is about the rich person is needs nobody. It's sort of free from everything. The angry person is not free at all. He always has an object of anger. Okay? He doesn't have this freedom to be, out of it. There's always this sort of attack on something else, right? ما أغنى عنه ماله ما كسب. Next verse. I don't know if you guys are actually seeing. Make sure that you guys are seeing these verses. Yeah. Next verse is. Come on, next. My laptop being slow again. سيصلى نارا ذات لهب. Right? He will be burnt in, or will burn him. Yes, يصلى, he will be burnt by a fire ذات لهب. Right? A fire which is possessing of lahab. Right? And if we take our understanding of lahab to mean this quality of anger, it means like this person will burn up in his own anger. Right? Burn up in his own. سيصلى, he will be burnt by his own anger. سيصلى نارا ذات لهب. Right? Next part is very interesting. وَامْرَأَتُهُ حَمَّالَةَ الْحَطَبِ. Okay? وَامْرَأَتُهُ. All right? وَامْرَأَتُهُ, the word imra'a, it's the feminized of, imri'in, right? The man, right? So it's like the companion, okay? The companion that you have with you. حَمَّالَةَ الْحَطَبِ. His wife, his companion will also be there. The one who carries the firewood. Now, what does that mean, carrying the firewood? Well, you have people, if you've ever noticed, there are people where you have somebody who is a sort of very angry person, right? Sometimes you find that they have a companion with them, right, who stokes their anger. The person who's always stoking their anger, making them more angry. They are bringing the firewood, right? They're bringing the tales, the backbiting, this, oh, this person said this, they fuel the person's anger. One of the reasons why they could do that, right, this is of course something which they shouldn't do. One of the reasons why they could do that could be given in, again, a method of it, a similitude of it is given in the next verse. في جيدها حبل من مسد. Why does this person do this? Okay, they have a rope around their own neck tying them to this person, right? So have you ever heard the saying, better to be in the devil's right side than in his path? Okay, it's better to be, a helper for the devil than in their path, right? So there are some people who can be like this, right? Rather than have somebody who's an angry person who they are tied to in some way, have that person, direct the anger at them, right? Because they know that this person is just going to blow up over certain things. No, they bring them the wood, the fuel, to be angry at others, right? That they become the helper of the angry person. Right, and this is it's a double thing where this person is doing the wrong thing, but at the same time they are sort of they're trapped to this person. Okay, في جيدها حبل من مسد. On her neck is a rope of mesed, right? A rope. And one interesting thing about the palm fiber ropes is you have to make them yourself, right? They're one of the easiest ropes to be made before. So something that you make yourself. All right. So I just might as well speak about this surah since we have nobody on. Okay. Another question here. Prayer and efforts. Assalamu alaikum. Any value of information in relation to naming of chapters, like chapter al-Ma'un? All right. Yeah. I mean, the Quran's chapters, like I said, most of them, I'm sure you're referring to what I said in one of the in the stream, in the videos about Surat al-Din, what I called it, Surat al-Din. Most of them are just labels, right? Most of the names of the surahs are just labels. It's just a way to identify the surah. And I think that's for most of the surahs, it's apt. Why? Because it's, imagine trying to give the most appropriate name for Surah Al-Baqarah, right? Like one name that sort of captures the whole surah. Very difficult, right? It's just such a big, broad surah. It's very difficult to do that. But the smaller surahs, like that one, Surah Al-Ma'un. I mean, even Al-Ma'un is a decent name for it. I mean, I prefer Surah Al-Din because that's so central, right? Just it's talking about the Deen. أَرَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ, right? In the first verse, and it's saying, do you see the one who, yukadhib, rejects or gives a lie to the Deen, right? And we have that sort of phraseology in some of the other surahs, right? Surah Al-Fil is called Alam Tara Kayfa Fa'alna Rabbuka bi Ashab al-Fil, right? The elephant, right? But like I said, most of the names of the surahs are just labels, and most of the time, the surahs are so intricate and complex that to give them an actual name would be more misleading than it would be leading to something, right? So just a label by some word that appears in it, I think it's apt, right? Surah An-Naml, the surah of the ants. Okay, that's just a surah where ants are mentioned. Surah Al-Nahl, surah where the bee is mentioned, etc. Right? So this just by giving it one label rather than an actual name, it allows it, to be, in our minds, maybe at least, it allows it to be what it is, okay, which is something which can be greater than what our minds can can conceptualize it, right? We can put borders around the surah of a name, a real name in our own minds, but the surah will be greater than that in reality, right? We can only see from it according to our capacity. So a label is more apt than a name. I'm not sure if I in those videos I shouldn't have at least said that we should be naming the surahs. Um, I was just mentioning that the most of the names of the surahs are labels; they are not actual names. And given this in the Surah Al-Ma'un, given it Surah Al-Din, a name of Surah Al-Din, and don't forget many of the surahs had multiple names. Many of the surahs throughout history had multiple names. Now we are used to the names that are in the Masahif now, but some of them were different. Surah Al-Isra used to be called Surah Bani Israel, right? Surah Al-Ghafir was called Surah Al-Mu'min, right? They were all called, they had more names than this. So yeah, I mean, it's you can maybe it's a good way of exercise of contemplation to try to give an actual name to a surah, right? To give it a name like Surah Al-Lahab, you could say, even the name in Surah, it's not called Surah Abu Lahab, is it? Very interesting, right? It's not called Surah Abu Lahab, it's called Surah Al-Lahab, right? Because Lahab is mentioned, in Abu Lahab and Sayasla Naran Dhata Lahab, right? So flame is just mentioned in that. But that's a very short step, I think, from that to anger. Okay, flames and anger. And it's a short surah, which is all talking about that. There are others as well, Surah Al-Asr, I think, is a good name for it. Talk about time and, the Asr in the dunya. I mean, we did a stream about that, didn't we? So the labels are given by the Abbasids. No, they weren't given. I don't think they were given by, like I said, there were multiple labels. Some of the labels were around in the Prophet's time, like Surah Al-Baqarah, is mentioned in narrations if you accept them, and Surah An-Nisa was called that at the time. Other surahs were just named by the first verse. Surah Al-Mulk was called Surah Tabarak. Yeah, in some verses, in some hadith says Surah Tabarak alladhi Al-Mulk, right? And then it was eventually called Surah Al-Mulk. It wasn't. They weren't, given the Abbasids. When we say, I had a brief sort of interaction with another YouTube channel in the comments section, where they were just saying, the Abbasids did this. Look, the Abbasids, the rulers didn't really do anything. Okay, they promoted or pushed and certain agendas. They brought close certain people, pushed away certain people. They paid for certain things, they punished for certain things, and that created the environment for the things that they wanted to happen that they wanted it. Okay, same thing with the Umayyads, right? Abu Huraira's son-in-law, who is the most knowledgeable about Abu Huraira, Sa'id ibn Musayyib, used to say that, Abu Huraira used to, when Muawiyah would send him some money, he would keep quiet. And when he didn't send him money, he would speak. Meaning speak about, he'd mention those narrations which were against, the Banu Umayyah and these kind of things, right? So, Muawiyah was buying his silence, right? So that kind of thing. Isn't that the Abbasids couldn't, a government at that time, there wasn't like social media, there wasn't like internet, there wasn't mass printing, there were just people going about working. Okay, the government at the time, empire, could not control everything that was happening, and besides which, the Abbasids were never ruled the whole of the Ummah, because part of the Ummah in the West was still controlled by the Umayyads, right? The Andalusia was still controlled by the Umayyads, right? They didn't collapse to the Abbasids, right? So they were still there. which throws a big span in all of these revisionist ideas. Okay, they say, okay, well, the Abbasids did this or that. Okay, well, the Umayyads in Andalusia, they kept on, they had the same version of history, right? So they can't do that. It was just it just happened organically. Okay, the naming of the surahs happened organically, and only now we only think of surahs as certain names now only because of the mass printing and the dominance of hafs, right? The dominance of hafs, which hafs doesn't come with labels for the surahs, right? Well, but the printing that was done, they had to choose a name, right? But then you can still find masahif now which have different names for different surahs. In Surah al-Fil, talking about known stories in the Hadith literature. Yeah, I mean, it says, أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِأَصْحَابِ الْفِيلِ. Do you not see how your Lord dealt with the people of, Ashab al-Fil? It was definitely something that was known in Mecca at the time. Definitely something that was known. Right? And, the literature on that is pretty clear about what happened. Abraha and the Fil, and there was even the grave of the person who, the Arab guy who acted as a guide for Abraha, and his grave was still being stoned till quite a while ago, because the people took him there. So yeah, it was talking about that again. And again, that's another point, right? About the verses which talk about something which is there imminent, and but of course the universals can be understood from it. أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِأَصْحَابِ الْفِيلِ أَلَمْ يَجْعَلْ كَيْدَهُمْ فِي تَضْلِيلٍ. Did he not make their plans go astray, right? وَأَرْسَلَ عَلَيْهِمْ طَيْرًا أَبَابِيلَ تَرْمِيهِم بِحِجَارَةٍ مِّن سِجِّيلٍ فَجَعَلَهُمْ كَعَصْفٍ مَأْكُولٍ. All right, okay. Just checking the comments. All right, looks like we don't have anything else. All right, so I guess this is going to be a short stream. I think I'll end it here. Thank you everybody for coming on. Maybe it's because we started so late. That's why we didn't have that many people come on. Jazakumullah khair. If anybody has a quick thing to say it now. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Eh? Saying that just because I saw the viewer count increase. So far somebody came on. All right, okay, that's fine. Okay, assalamu alaikum. Take care of yourselves, everybody, and see you again next week.